Hello everyone, this is Darcinovia here. This is my review on Outbound Flight. I know I'm probably going to make a terrible joke here, but sorry for the long wait. I know it's been 5 years, I think. I was more interested in reading other stuff other than Outbound Flight. And yeah, Outbound Flight. How is this book? How does this stack up to Timothy Zahn's other novels? Well, Outbound Flight, in my opinion, is still a great book. Even though I've have not read Survivor's Quest, which came out before this one. As its own standalone story, I think Outbound Flight does a great job connecting with other parts of the Star Wars expanded universe, such as the New Jedi Order, other of Zahn's works, and even certain parts of the prequels. Now, this book does answer some questions that, the Thrawn trilogy and Hand of Thrawn duology, presented us. What is Outbound Flight? What was the project? How did everything go wrong? Why was Outbound Flight destroyed? Well, at this point, the New Jedi Order series was already concluded, and the Dark Nest trilogy was in production or was about to be published. So sorry if I get minor details wrong. So this had to tie into the New Jedi Order somewhat. So the Yuuzhan Vong, of course, for those of you who are familiar with the novel Rogue Planet, they're referred to as the Far Outsiders. Now, that's just a minor connection to the New Jedi Order. This book does actually give us more of a insight on the character of Thrawn that the Thrawn trilogy doesn't give us, or the Hand of Thrawn duology. We learn of Thrawn's reasonings for doing what he did in the Hand of Thrawn duology, and how Thrawn had a contingency planning, in the instance of his death. But in here, we get to see other aspects of the character of Thrawn that would eventually be used in canon. Now, this book doesn't demystify the character of Thrawn. This novel gives us more insight on the character without demystifying the character or revealing too much, because Thrawn is an interesting character. Not much is known about him in the EU, and the intrigue for the character is still there. We learn a good amount of new information, but not too much. Thrawn, every time the character is ever featured, he's written from the perspective of other characters. This is something that I completely and 100% can get behind, because I feel like the character of Thrawn, when you don't know when he's thinking, it makes Thrawn more interesting to me. What is Thrawn thinking? What is he actually planning? Unlike the canon novels where you actually get to read inside Thrawn's head, I personally think this approach works beautifully for a character like Thrawn. This is Thrawn in his younger days, so he's not who we completely see from the Thrawn trilogy, but there's glimpses of the tactical genius that Thrawn is. And we get to actually see that for ourselves, how Thrawn single-handedly pretty much destroyed Outbound Flight and the enemies of the Chiss without actually giving us, the reader, the idea of how he would do it. And when we actually learn how he did it, it's like, wow, you son of a bitch. You are a great strategist. Now, there's other parts that people are going to wonder. What about the other stories? What about the other, plot lines? Well, there's another plot line that involves members of the Trade Federation trying to destroy Outbound Flight, but they fail because they run into my boy Thrawn, who basically makes them out to look like children, and they have no choice and reluctantly work with Sidious. Their entire objective is to ensure the destruction of Outbound Flight. Why? The Far Outsiders, a.k.a. the Yuzon Vong, they do not want to provoke them because of some psychopathic Jedi like Julius Sabayoff, who, if anybody has read the Thrawn trilogy, would know, if the clone is insane, what about the original? Well, I'll get to that in a bit. Now, the other storyline that we have is the one involving Julius Sabayoff and his Padawan, who gets knighted at the halfway point in the story. Now, what about him? Because up until now, we only got brief glimpses of the original Julius Sabayoff and novels like Cloak of Deception. We barely got anything on this character. Now, if anybody knows, the original Julius Sabayoff was crazy. At least what we known as in the Thrawn trilogy, what we were introduced. He was a power-hungry, insane Jedi that believed that the Jedi should rule above everybody else. Well, if the clone is insane, well, the original, holy crap. The original was borderline psychotic, and I am actually shocked that the Jedi actually allowed somebody like this to be among their midst. I mean, this guy was definitely bound to fall to the dark side sooner or later. Now, like Thrawn, we don't know what Julius Sabayoff is thinking. We get the perspective of Sabayoff from the perspective of other characters, which makes it even more intriguing, because I still would like to know what motivates this guy. Why is he the way he is? And I like that. Some mystery is good, and with a character like Julius Sabayoff, I think he's almost as interesting as Thrawn. In fact, in some ways, even more interesting, at least in my opinion, at least in this novel. I mean, the original, barely anything is known about him, and I wish, more was written about this character before this novel. Well, I guess we'll never know what motivates Julius Sabayoff, what he was like in his younger years. And I think that's what this novel's greatest strength was. Making a character that, Julius Sabayoff, why would anybody be interested in that? But the original, I do find to be a fascinating character in this novel. There isn't a single character in this book I could say that is dull, that is boring, that is not interesting. Outbound Flight, in my opinion, succeeds just like every other Timothy Zahn novel does in making all of the characters you read about equally intriguing. Whether it's some minor side characters, whether it's cameos from characters like Mace Windu, or get to see how Obi-Wan, what he thinks of Julius Sabayoff and his methods, and see young Anakin, which barely anything is written with Anakin Skywalker in this part of his life, how he sees Julius Sabayoff. Like, all of these things is what makes this interesting, and I love this. This book, to me, is a great prequel, and I don't say that lightly. It's a great prequel. It's a great prequel to all of Timothy Zahn's previous stories, and part of me does wish I would have read Survivor's Quest years ago. Who knows? I might review that in the near future, but I have another novel, plans, which I'll reveal later in a Jedi's Cantina review. Outbound Flight, in my opinion, succeeds. It's almost a flawless book that gives us everything you could potentially want in a Star Wars novel. It gives us intriguing characters. This is, in my opinion, is what made me fall in love with the EU in the first place. Is characters, big or small, being interesting. And Timothy Zahn, I have to hand it to the man, did a phenomenal job with Outbound Flight. I'm not just saying this as somebody that, oh my god, Timothy Zahn's the greatest author. People know that I may not be the biggest Timothy Zahn fan because of some of his comments he said over the years regarding the New Jedi Order series, or him being butthurt over the death of Mara Jade. But you gotta hand it to the man. He can write. Outbound Flight, in my opinion, deserves a classic rating. It's definitely one of the best expanded universe books. It's definitely one of the best books in the prequel era. And in my opinion, if you are a fan of Timothy Zahn, pick this book up. You will not regret it. This is Dark Sinovia. May the Force be with you, and see you guys next time with another video.